Hello, folks, and welcome to another episode of Quantum Years podcast with me, your host, Wendie Patrick. I'm the founder and owner of Finessium Health, and you can see us online. You can see us on Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, all the places. And of course, you can listen to and download our podcast on any of your favorite platforms. We welcome all of those who actually are loyal followers at this point. Thank you for joining us again. And please let others know if there's information that we share in our podcast that could be useful to others, or in fact, other information that just hasn't been available to you anywhere else. Something you may trip over just hits something with you and resonates with you and makes sense. And that's kind of what I try to do. I try to dig into things and look at things in a different way to understand them better and almost in a simpler way rather than any weird and strange convoluted manner. So I'm not a vet. I'm not giving any veterinary information. I am not sharing anything to be of any medical diagnosis or treatments or anything like that. That is strictly up to you and your vet. I am a certified naturopath, and I just work with assisting and maintaining the health and well-being of your animals in various different forms and modalities. So have a look at us on finessiumhealth.com, and you can certainly find out more about what I do, both in person and remotely around the world. But today, and I apologize in advance if my voice sounds a bit funny, I'm just getting over a bit of a cold here, which is a strange time of year for me for getting the sniffles. But there you go. It's just one of those things. But I got a little bit more organized today, and I actually have a script. I did lots of work, put all of my stuff in together, and actually produced a little script. So I'm going to try and stay on topic, which is odd for me, I know, if any of you have listened to the others. But what I'm going to delve into today is about keeping our dogs cool in summer or in any time of the year where it's really hot. Because if you're in Australia, that's winter. But a lot of things that are always sort of touted and promoted and advertised are cooling blankets or vests or fans or just the regular things to cool down really the temperature on the outside of the animal and around its environment. But what I'm going to look at now is a bit more as to what else can contribute to your dog overheating in higher temperatures, and we're going to go into that. So I'm going to stick to the script. Yeah, I know that's a very odd concept for me and any of my listeners, but we'll see how it goes. Hopefully, it doesn't get too dry and boring. But I'll probably fly off on a tangent here or there when other things creep into my memory again. So we want to go further than the usual advice of the frozen treats, not leaving the dog in the car, God forbid, and there's still people everywhere that do it. But for dogs, cooling isn't just comfort, it is physiology. Dogs cool mainly through panting, as most of us know. They can't sweat. They don't have sweat glands on their body, so their noses, their paw pads are the only places where they can really kind of get excess sweat out as such. So panting actually is how they cool themselves down because it evaporates moisture from the tongue and the airways, and that helps to pull heat out of the body. But here's the part a lot of us kind of miss. Panting's also hard work. So if the weather's hot enough, your dog may need to pant harder and for longer just to stay within a safe temperature range. And while cooling efforts are not enough, when they can't drop their temperature quickly, they just don't feel warm anymore. They move into a stress state as well. And that stress can ripple. And that's what we're going to be looking at a little bit more closely. First of all, whenever that stress ripples, it can affect digestion. When a dog is in a heightened stress response, the nervous system signals to the gut, and that those can change. So digestion may slow down or become more sensitive. Some dogs may get softer stool, diarrhea, reduced appetite, nausea, basically a heat stress response or gut flare. Second, that stress and immune shift can contribute to inflammation style responses. Note the word inflammation there. Once the body is repeatedly pushed into stress, especially during hot days, it can become more reactive in different systems. Owners notice flare ups that seem to track with heat, so an upset tummy, increased itching, ear issues, general crankiness, sort of restlessness, and just less resilience overall. So, signs that they just don't look like they're coping well. Now let's add a second letter, and this is where it gets interesting because heat stress doesn't also affect the gut, it can also affect the brain. In simple terms, the brain and the immune system are connected. Stress changes the signaling in the body, and inflammatory signals can reach the brain through nervous system pathways and through signals in the bloodstream. That can contribute to what's often described as neuroinflammation, meaning an inflammatory response involving the nervous system. Now, that sounds a wee bit weird. I'll get back into it as to what you would see at home. When dogs are stuck in an ongoing heat stress issue, especially when they can't cool effectively, owners often notice restlessness or poor sleep, irritability, just in general, you just can't settle, lower tolerance for activity, so they seem to give up retrieving that ball as often, or they just don't seem as interested in play or walks, perhaps. Behavior changes that come with hot weather, and sometimes that just can't get comfortable feeling that lasts longer than you'd expect. So you're thinking of your senior dogs here where, they might pace or circle 4 or 5 times before they find that comfortable spot to lie down. That might increase. So just, be aware of these little signs. A lot of people always say to me, oh, I wish I knew what my dog was saying, or wish I knew what my dog was thinking. Well, if you watch body language and behavior in general, you will actually start to pick up a lot more information from your animal than what you'll give yourself credit for. But please trust your gut on this. Now, let's look at the brachycephalic breeds. Now, that's the ones with the very short, squished noses. So, pugs, bulldogs, Boston Terriers, um, anything with a short muzzle, and those in a case of as well that have been bred to have shorter muzzles that didn't maybe 100 years ago in the breed lines, but that's another. Oh, look at me. Am I flying off on a tangent? Very possibly. But brachycephalic dogs or short-nosed dogs often have breathing limitations to begin with. So that means cooling via panting may be less effective, especially when the air is hot and humid or when airflow is harder. So instead of cooling smoothly, they will have to work harder just to breathe. And that effectively makes heat stress more intense and more prolonged. We should also touch on those dogs with seizures. Some of those little dogs that have very small heads and very big brains. I'm thinking one particular breed, and they are prone to having neurological difficulty and sometimes seizures. So more stress that increases the heat in the body and increases the inflammation in the brain, it can certainly be a trigger. So be very careful and watch those signs. So the feedback loop is faster in these. So heat rises, panting effort rises, stress rises, cooling becomes harder, and stress stays elevated longer. And when we say that stress stays elevated longer, you're more likely to see the downstream effects. So those gut imbalances, nervous system and immune signaling changes that can show up as inflammation style symptoms and behavior changes. Think of the extra itching, because sometimes itching can be self-soothing. A lot of dogs, even as simply as excessively licking their paws, where that was maybe habit forming before, but it's a self-soothing mechanism. So because they're not getting relief any other way. Upset in the system with the inflammation adding to the hot bodies. So it increases yeast production, you're getting more ear issues, all sorts of things like that. So watch out for disorientated behavior as well. And that's the brain being very overwhelmed and actually a very good indicator of a chance of heat stroke. So a lot of things that we can do before we get to that stage or before your dog is allowed to get to that stage. And something very important that a lot of people just, no, I wouldn't say overlook, but maybe just don't pay as close attention to as they should, and maybe take the wrong route as an answer or as a a reply to what these symptoms and this heat is giving to the dog, and that's grooming. I mean, grooming is also a very, very important part, because coat management is what helps dogs thermoregulate, regulate their temperature. Um, Many double coated and longer coated dogs rely on their coat to create an insulation and airflow system. And that's a key part of how that works, is whether the coat can move and breathe. So when a dog's hair and coat isn't matted, the skin and hair are able to function properly. And that includes tiny little erector pili muscles, which are around the hair follicles, which can lift and lower the hair to increase or decrease airflow at the skin surface. So, in other words, a healthy unmatted coat can help with the dog's built in air conditioning effect, better ventilation close to the skin. So, that's important for thermoregulation, and no, shaving them short doesn't help, especially on long coated breeds where their hair is their insulation. So it can protect the body temperature from increasing too much, because as the hair rises, the airflow goes through and it's creating this lovely little wind tunnel, if you like, between the hairs and keeping that surface skin cooler. Now, if you remove all of that hair off the top, you've actually removed that whole insulation, or that barrier or protection that that dog needs in order to keep itself at a manageable temperature. So that would be like taking the insulation out of your house because you say your house is too hot in the summer, so you're going to rip the insulation out of it. Same kind of deal with a double coated breed. There was a slide I shared quite a few years ago now. I'm thinking close to 10 years, if not more, probably more. Produced by Pure Paws, and that was actually where they had looked at the coat of a double coated breed, which is a Newfoundland in this instance, and they did the temperature check at the top surface of the back. I can't remember what the temperature was outside, but it was hot. It was hot, like say in the 30s or 80s, depending on where you are. And they then took the heat temperature underneath the dog at the belly, where there was very, very fine hair, not a lot of hair at all. And there was a difference of about 11 degrees. So that shows you that the temperature at the skin level was a lot less than what was actually being almost reflected back, or the dog was being protected. Because if that had been the same heat going all the way through that dog, you would have had a similar reading on the underneath. So be aware that the double coat, your German Shepherd, you wouldn't think of shaving a German Shepherd. So why are we shaving Newfoundlands? Why are we shaving Golden Retrievers? Well, I'm not. I'm saying the royal we as such. I always taught never to do that. Make sure it's mat free. Make sure it's well groomed. Get into a good grooming routine. Start when they're as young as possible, or as soon as you get them home, and don't look at it as a chore. We've gotten touching on grooming a lot of times before, so I don't need to go into that today. So whenever cooling is happening, it happens through the lungs and the gut. So it's also happening through the skin and coat. So your double coated breeds, as we say, rely on their coat to create an insulation and airflow system. So when a dog's hair isn't matted, then that can actually help. So definitely don't be just going off and shaving those double coated breeds. Now, certainly whenever you have those little breeds that are just regularly clipped, so your little cockapoos, bichons, poodle mixes, poodles themselves, where it's a lot more common to clip the coat for easier maintenance for their guardian. Then also make sure as well, because those light and white, pale colored coats are also going to be a little bit more prone to sunburn. So yes, you can get a little cooling jacket for them, or just a little light cotton, something very breathable to protect them from that. There are supposedly doggy sunscreens out there, but again, I'd be very careful about the actual ingredients. And also as well, if you think about it, it's actually a deficiency in zinc that causes the skin to burn faster, especially with ourselves. So if you have you don't have a zinc deficiency, and some dogs are prone to that, so maybe look at things like that as well. So anywho, so during the summer, grooming isn't cosmetic, it's temperature support. So you need to go through your grooming routine, check for your mats and tangles, especially focusing around armpits, because a lot of people, especially here in the UK, use harnesses aplenty. So it's a very high friction area. And if there's hair and friction and it rubs together and it's not combed out regularly, you'll get a mat. And that's incredibly uncomfortable for the dog as well. Behind ears, where it's also very common to do the scratching and everything, which will tangle. The neck, where the collar would be, even the back end on the pants, if they're a thicker, profuse coat. If you haven't got out that dead undercoat from their shedding cycle, then that can hold on to moisture in as well. And then you're looking at other issues around the skin with it not drying out properly and creating the likes of hot spots and things like that. So just things like that to look for. So, of course, if there's any big mats and you don't know how to do it safely, make sure you book in with your nearest professional groomer that knows how to remove those for you and help that coat come back in nicely. So, you can definitely do things like that. So, whenever we're talking about keeping the dog cool, we're not necessarily just thinking about a cooling event, but we're looking at access so that the dog can actively cool itself. So most people are thinking, oh, I'll give a frozen treat or I'll try something once they're already struggling. But for many dogs, they won't show you they're struggling until they're in an extreme or chronic state. That's the same with most health issues with the dogs. They won't show you right away because it's a sign of weakness, and they just don't do that. So your best win is also always prevention. So set your environment up before your dog hits heavy panting. You've heard the weather forecast, you know there's another heat wave coming in or whatever it is. So check those areas and set yourself up a nice cooling area, not just for your dog, but also somewhere where you can sit in the shade as well and maybe actually enjoy a cup of tea or a little adult beverage or a juice or whatever, just a simple glass of water and read a book and enjoy as well. But remember that those reflective surfaces, so concrete can heat up also the color of it as well. UV rays can bounce back off that onto your animal. So don't just leave a little postage stamp size area for them to be in the shade, but make it significant so that when the sun moves around as well, a little breeze coming through, that surface can stay cool. So, in other words, don't be going out when the concrete is already heated up, or the tarmac, God forbid, because that's even worse, or the blacktop, whatever way you refer to that. But make sure you have it prepared. So do it the night before, even set up your little gazebo or a little tent or whatever it is, or a coverage to shade that spot. So it's going to stay cooler and not wait until it's, the middle of the afternoon and then go, oh, I'll set some shade up. Remember, if you can't stand barefoot on the ground, then of course your dog is going to find that even more uncomfortable being asked to go for a walk on that. So this isn't just about all the things that I'm assuming that you already know, but we have to cover it for those in the back. Or for those of your new dog owners and just aren't aware of all of these things, haven't taken this into consideration yet. But that's what we'll try to do, is help you succeed with your animal and animal care before accidents or incidents happen. So make sure, of course, there's always regular fresh drinking water. Don't leave the thing that was sitting out there a week ago, because it's now probably full of infested larvae, fly eggs, oh, God knows what else. Fresh drinking water, cool. Throw a few ice cubes into it if you want. Some dogs do like crunching ice cubes. Some would be too much of a severe change of temperature. So everything in moderation, folks. Just use a bit of common sense here as well, and see what suits. Certainly fans and stuff set up can help. Excuse me, sorry, I'm got a little drip on my nose. For those of you watching me on YouTube, I'm just having a little wipe on my nose. Okay, so we've talked about those cooling things. So it's not just your frozen treats, but we're also looking as well at use the panting as your early warning system, if you like. So if you're not all panting is dangerous, but it's a natural response. I'm not trying to panic you in any shape or form, but you should watch for a pattern. So if that dog's really panting badly and it's not sort of calming down, pay attention. If your dog's panting mildly and then settling, okay, grand, that's good. You're all good. But if you're wondering if it's not settling after being in the shade, after having water, then just keep an eye, because if the panting doesn't start to calm down after you've helped them cool, then that's a sign that their cooling strategy may be overwhelmed. So remember, panting is also a stress response, as we've mentioned, and that dog will do to de-stress in certain overwhelming situations. And sometimes they will just sit and pant because they need to go poo. So maybe you're in a coffee shop or something like that. Well, maybe it's your time to get up and get out there because puppy needs a toilet break. But if that's not the case, that's the moment to intervene more proactively. So, beyond frozen treats and cooling tools that support the body, there's some home remedies that dogs tolerate well and that support cooling rather than just numbing comfort. So, your cool damp cloth on the neck and the chest, and also in the groin, because the groin is where a lot of those nerve endings go, and certainly the groin will actually help to cool down the body quicker, because whenever you cover that belly button, as it were, that belly button area in the groin area on a dog, the same as ourselves, your blood passes through that area 3 times a minute. So you're always going to be able to cool down the bloodstream and cool that down, which will then transfer throughout the body and spread that better. So use a cool, not icy, damp cloth. So just for placing it on there for 10, 15 minutes or so, and see. And certainly as well, though, with those brachycephalics or in the fact of bulldogs, because whenever that breathing is already restricted on a normal day or a cooler day, that's going to be heightened so much. So a little cool face cloth on their forehead or the top of their head as well, just to keep that heat in that brain from going too high, because they will go into heat stroke like that. So it's very, very important to be careful with them. So cool out, hangout zones. If your dog chooses a particular spot, well, that's where they'll stay. Make it a smart one. So make sure that there's cool water there, that it's shade. Perhaps if there's a breeze coming through as well, that's great. Stick a fan up, even if it is outside. If it's inside, then yes, definitely stick a fan up. Now, misting as well can sometimes help, but that's only in a very dry, arid climate. So you'd be thinking maybe even in the likes of Alberta, Canada, or in Texas, or the middle of Australia, where it's very, very dry, there's not so much humidity, then misting will work. But if you're sitting around in Nova Scotia or Ireland or that, where there's more humidity in the air, misting isn't going to make it easier. It's going to make it harder. So be sensible. And certainly, look for these things and work out what's going to work for your area. And only mist as well if it's going to be useful, if it actually helps to reduce the dog panting and makes them more comfortable. Managing your timing of walks, as we've said, if you can't put your foot on that pavement or that sidewalk or that footpath or that driveway and hold it there comfortably for 5 minutes, even 2 minutes, that's all it takes. You think, oh, your dog's going to be fine. No. A big thing as well is, just because somewhere's dog friendly doesn't necessarily mean you should be taking your dog there if the climate is going to actually cause them stress. That's not very good. I've seen as well where people are sitting outside coffee shops. Oh, we're sitting outside because it's nice and cooler and with the dog, but it's not cool. I actually took my shoe off one day outside a coffee shop here and put it on the pavement and went, it's actually quite warm. And there was a lovely big double coated breed sitting with its owner right there, baking in the sun, panting profusely. And, you know, to which I said, oh, is your dog maybe better in a shaded spot or with a drink of water? And you're just always brushed off. Oh, he's fine. He's fine. He's fine. I know my dog, kind of thing. And it's obvious that they don't. Listen to your animal, people, please, for the love of dog. I mean, they're showing you that they're in discomfort. The dog was almost like patting its feet as well because it was uncomfortable. It was getting irritated. It was getting impatient. And, those are stress signs. Just listen to them, for goodness sake. Don't just be sitting there watching all the people looking at you and your dog and thinking you're the best thing since sliced bread. Yeah. I mean, if only slapping people was allowed and acceptable. Oops, was that in my out loud voice again? But any of any of you that are listening, you're already on this track with me, so I know you're getting it, and hopefully there's a few giggles on the other end of the listening booth there. But yeah, please listen to the dog. So yeah, go earlier in the day. And if that's 4 o'clock in the morning, it's 4 o'clock in the morning. But no dog ever died because they didn't get a walk. So remember that and don't go, well, this is my routine. I don't care about your routine. I really don't. Suck it up, your animal, and do what's for them. So whenever you're thinking about the walks that you usually do, and this is your routine, look at the weather, look outside, go stand outside in your bare feet for a minute and just check and go, is there a breeze? Is this comfortable? Should I wait another hour? Oh, if that disrupts your schedule, well, then your dog just doesn't go out for a walk for the day. As long as they can get out and pee and poo, you can certainly set them up with things to, and into not integrate. What's the word? Involve their brain, engage their brain. There we go. And if I can engage mine, and get some enrichment activities going. So, a frozen licky mat is great. Stuffed Kongs or your stuffy toys with your peanut butters or your pumpkins or your bone broths or whatever. And also think of using those foods that are cool. So stay away from the likes of meat pates or something like that. Stick to something more vegetable based, more of a cooling food, even fruit like watermelons, some really nice light stuff, pumpkin broth that you can make up, or pumpkin powder made into a little juice or whatever, or paste. Smear that on your licky mat, throw it in the freezer, and it's just something to basically help them, because also when they're licking as well, that's also easing their stress responses if they are a little upset or bored as well from being inside because they can't go out. Lots and lots of things to do, and there's lots of different information out there on ways that you can help with enrichment and cooling foods and things like that. So, as I'm talking about cooling foods and stuff, let's go back to this connection between the gut and inflammation story, because that helps explain why cooling isn't just about feeling better. When a dog's in sustained heat stress, the stress response stays active. That can change nervous system signaling to the gut and increase sensitivity. So digestion may become upset, as we were saying earlier. When the body's repeatedly pushed into stress, immune signaling can shift towards a more inflammatory reactive pattern across body systems. So this bit is important. We're leaving the best to the end, if you like. So practically, this means if your dog gets diarrhea or vomiting on hot days, it's not random belly problems. It may be your dog's stress cooling system being overwhelmed. And the gut often tells that story. When the food angle, without making it mysterious, during heat stress, the priorities are keep meals consistent, avoid sudden big changes right in the hottest weeks, consider smaller, easier portions if your dog tends to get nauseous, and feed them when they're most comfortable, often earlier in the morning or a little bit later in the evening. Now, certainly dogs are very routine, so they know what time mealtime is. And if you want to change that, that can also be upsetting. So, pay attention to what your dog's letting you know about. And don't be upset if they're not eating as much as they used to. Don't think that that's a problem. Think about it. You're not sitting down, perhaps, to, a full 3-course meal in the middle of a hot summer day. You'll have a light salad. And you're also aware that, you'll eat something that's more cooling. You'll be more likely into your watermelons and fruits and things like that as well, rather than these big, heavy, hot items. So when you're thinking of that, relate that to your dog too. They're already showing you the signs if they're uncomfortable. They're already turning their nose up at something if it's the same stuff. And they're already letting you know that if they're too hot inside, they don't want to eat to produce more heat, because that's what the body does whenever it's actually digesting and stuff as well. It will produce heat. Now, I've gone on to the Let's Talk Turkey, I mean Chicken, which was one of the first episodes here in season 2, where I touched on the traditional Chinese medicine teachings of hot food and cold food. So that's important to, if you want to go back and revise that or look at that, listen to that. And just knowing that certain proteins, certain foods are considered hot and certain are considered cold. So if your dog is on, say, a chicken-based diet, chicken is a hot food generally because of the way they live. So you might think of maybe a little bit of a fish-based food to have during the hotter months. Certainly, a lot of people are always nervous about changing food if they've found one after a long time, and that's certainly an issue, certainly a concern And I'm not telling you to change your diet for your dog in the middle of a heat wave just because I said so. I'm not saying that at all. What you want to do is look at those. So maybe the smaller meals might actually be the answer. Maybe adding in a few of those cooler foods as well to help bring that body temperature down. And so it's nice to share a little bit of, like a little cold carrot stick, or a little bit of sweet potato or something like that, and have your dog used to these different things. So it is seen as a treat, and it will actually help. Because remember, whenever a dog is in a stressed state, the immune system is also being compromised, and introducing new foods at that time can actually trigger an allergic response. Haha. Yes, it's in heightened states of stress when new things are introduced that can actually go no, because the body just doesn't recognize what it is. So these are things that you can employ into your whole dog care routine, where little things, if you have them as a treat in the summertime, yeah, have a little bit of watermelon, share it with your dog, share it with your horse. Lots of people do. Um, the balanced way to frame it that's fair to science and helpful to owners. Even if you don't take traditional Chinese medicine temperature system literally, people notice the patterns anyway. And some proteins just seem to agree better with certain dogs. That may relate to individual sensitivity, digestibility, total fat load, and how the gut responds during stress heavy seasons. So, lamb being hypoallergenic doesn't mean it works for every dog. It just means some owners have more success with it. So it would be more of a less allergy causing, but hypoallergenic doesn't mean it doesn't cause allergies. Therefore, you should feed it. Some dogs just don't tolerate it at all. But if you're looking to do a protein swap or anything like that, remember as well that we do all of these sessions and do testing as well with you and your dog, no matter where you are, if you're needing help with this, or in fact, look at our course and learn how to do it yourself. But finding out what works is more than just throwing down a cool blanket, a bowl of water, turning a fan on. Look at those signals as well, because whenever that heat increases in your animal, you want to see things more clearly. If your dog has concerning breathing collapses, has repeated vomiting, and is an extremely lethargic, or you're worried they might be overheating, don't wait it out. You go to the vet now. That's heat stroke. That's heat stroke. Get to the vet. Or find out what to do and do it, and basically slap yourself silly because you should have seen this coming. So the big idea to remember, yeah, it's not just treating comfort, it's preventing a stress cycle. When they can't cool enough, stress rises, that ripples into the gut, immune signaling, even behavior, nervous system, inflammation pathways. So yes, be very careful, so that your dog doesn't get stuck in that loop where heat comes in, body overheats, panting doesn't cool, stress response increases. Therefore, that adds to inflammation increasing, which then you're seeing coming through in behavioral issues. You're coming through in gut imbalances. You're coming through with more yeast flares. Everybody tends to know what the yeast flares are. Um, more ear issues. So all of these things are all showing that this is a heat response. And if you're going, well, my dog's doing that in the middle of winter, well, then definitely I would be looking at getting in touch with a canine or animal nutritionalist, someone like myself, and get the animal checked out and tested and find out what is causing that. And we don't do anything invasive, as any of you who have been with us know. It's all through applied kinesiology, energy, which is physics. And we can test them remotely and find out exactly what the ingredient is that's triggering that stress response, if you like, or the inflammation. Because a lot of our dogs are eating carbs, especially if you're using a cooked diet or a processed kibble, depending on the source of it or the maker of it and how it's produced. But most of those are still quite a high carb. And if you know anything about how everybody is always talking about our own diets, about reducing carbs, because they sit and cause inflammation. Also, look at the cheap oils. So, we're looking at vegetable oils, sunflower oils, safflower oils, rapeseed oils, all of those nasty, almost synthetic oils, as I call them. And know that they're not a healthy oil, but they are quite a nasty oil and go rancid very quickly, and also add to the inflammation in the body because they're not a natural pure oil like a coconut oil, hemp seed, flaxseed, pure virgin olive oil, that kind of thing. So lots of things to consider, but remember that if that stress response is going up, the heat can also be contributing to those, what a lot are brushing off as allergies. They're also brushing off as just a stress response. But yeah, you can look at that from a very, very basic standpoint, and it could simply be their food that is actually accelerating those heat responses. But lots of more things to do. And I just wanted to touch on that because everybody just goes into the cooling foods, this, that, and the other thing. But the more and more animals I've been meeting this summer, especially, where they go, oh, they're just really itchy, they're really itchy, they're really itchy. And then I started doing a little bit of joining the dots and digging a little bit more and going, you know what, that could simply be a heat stress response, where they increase inflammation because the dog can't cool because it's on a lesser quality diet. But there's always things that can be added to help. So certainly pay attention. Don't just brush off that itchy coat as allergies. It could be a heat stress response. And that's something that we want to help alleviate for your animal and help them be more comfortable. So that's it. I think I got through that without flying off on too many tangents. Fairly longish one, but not too bad. But thank you again for joining me. And just, yeah, try tracking the pattern. If your dog seems a bit off, journal it, stick a wee note on the calendar. The easiest thing I always tell people is, okay, take 30 days. Here's your 30-day free trial, if you like. So go to your calendar every day and say mark between 1 and 5, where your dog has 1 star, it's pretty poor, 5 stars is pretty good. Or you can look at that as 5 stars being a really heightened bad day for them. Whatever scale you want that you will understand, use that. And then put a number in each day and look at that over 30 days and see where it was bad. Was that the heat? Was it the full moon? And we can actually tie things like that together to find out what the root cause of, say, your dog's discomfort is, as opposed to just throwing things at them to numb that or disguise something else or just stop the symptoms. So you are in control. You do have that knowledge, that power, and everything else. Don't believe that you don't. Don't think you don't know enough. You do. Trust your gut. Watch your dog. Listen to your dog. Record things. Journal it. It just builds an even closer thing because they are speaking to you all the time. And we're actually going to touch on animal communication in a future one coming up as well. So that's going to be an interesting one. And yeah, it's not as crazy and out there as a lot of people might tend to think. But in the meantime, enjoy the rest of your summer, depending on when you're listening to this, of course. But have a very, very nice time. Have a good break if you're off on holidays. Look out for that pup, look out for the dogs, look out for all of them, and certainly be their voice. If you see a dog that's in distress or being upset, try, at least try, even if you're told off that you don't know my dog, I do. Okay, fine. At least you've tried. At least you've tried. And if nothing else, you may have planted a seed and make that person just pay a little bit more attention to that animal and do something for their well-being. We can hope. We can hope. Onwards and upwards, right? But have a blessed day. Thank you very much indeed for joining me again. Make sure to share, like, comment, subscribe, and indeed jot me off an email or something if you wish to have me talk on a certain subject, or if you need help, you can book an appointment with me directly on the website or through email. That's always the best way to contact me because there's so many different things, and all of this is really just me here. So thanks again for everybody. I will see you again soon, and you'll hear me again soon. And in the meantime, stay possum.